Sweet. Now we're live.
All right.
Hey, world.
We're going to check in with the Twitter roll.
Yes, let us do that now.
Dreyfus see a sad day as an amazing man passes on.
Yeah, and of course that sentiment is repeated much. DJ Blizz says, whoa, Steve Jobs, found out he died on AOTS, which is a bummer. Final Pierce says, Steve Jobs, rest in peace. I would have wanted him to see the future, which, there's been rampant speculation for a while as to the state of Steve Jobs' health, and that was, one thing that I think I felt, and I think a lot of people here felt, that we knew, another iPhone was going to be announced. We knew some other products were going to be announced, and I think we were all just hoping that he might see one more press conference, one more keynote, one more release to really see, where his company's heading. And I hope, it's tragic, to say the least.
Very sad day.
And I hope he's laid out a roadmap for his company. The man was visionary, to say the absolute least. I mean, that's the history of the term visionary. That was the most understated use ever. That man built a company twice over, and obviously people are very upset. MF Angelita says, Steve Jobs was a genius because he developed things before we even realized how useful they would be. I use my iPod every day of the year. Which is true. We talk about podcasts all the time, and everybody's got one, everybody uses one, and they forget that the genesis of that word, it was born out of one of Apple's visionary products. Steve was so good at seeing an emerging market, letting others kind of make their moves, and then hopping in when the time was right and showing people what that product or that market could really become. I think that's where he excelled the most. Slayer's Girl 23 says, it's incredibly saddening to know that Steve has passed. He made the future possible. Yeah. I have a feeling that for hours and hours and days and weeks and months and years to come, this will be the sentiment. But he's built an incredible company with an incredible legacy.
What was the first Apple product you had?
The first one that I used was in elementary school. It was an Apple II GS. And I used that to discover where Carmen Sandiego was hiding in the world, and also to get my wagon through the Oregon Trail, which really meant hunting a lot. But even at that time, the Apple had a different feel. It had a different vibe. It was just better and more interesting to me than the 386s of the world, And I wax and wane between PC and Mac for a long time, but, Steve was right. I'm a bit of an Apple fanboy, to say the least. Now my house is pretty much littered with his amazing works.
And what's your favorite product of all of his?
Oh wow. Well,
Can you even
say
a favorite?
I've got the laptops and the Apple TV and the iPhone and all my iDevices. I love my Mac Pro. I mean, everything I use and create, and I think this is the sentiment amongst many people out there. At some point, especially for creative works, a project touches one of his products. A project touches a Mac, it touches an Apple, and they make it more fun. They really do. So, do you want to read some more tweets, perhaps?
Aaron Hill, I can't believe that Steve Jobs is dead. What a legacy. What will Apple come to now?
Yeah, that's going to be that's a huge question. Obviously, we don't really know what sort of roadmap Steve Jobs has laid out. We don't know where this is going to go over the next few years.
I'm sure it's been left in good hands, but
certainly. Apple's an amazing company, and I'm sure they're going to handle the transition, and they have been prepping for this, and they're ready for that transition. But it's just one of those things where you hope that he's laid it out for a while because he was so good at predicting what the next 5 to 10 years was going to be.
Yeah.
We're kind of flying by the seat of our pants here, to be honest, because this just happened, but we wanted to stay live to showcase your reactions and to discuss it a little bit. Actually, standing by right now, we have Matt Myra and Kevin Kelly from G4. Hello, gentlemen.
Hello, Kevin.
I wish we were saying hello under far better circumstances.
It's a sad reason to come, but
but we're glad you're here. So, when we take a look back at Apple and we take a look back at Steve Jobs, what stands out for you guys?
Well, for me, I will never forget the cover of, I think it was a Wired magazine that was the black apple with the barbed wire around it, and it said, pray. This is when the company was doing terribly. The stock was lowest it's ever been. Mm-hmm. Then the iPod came, and the company changed completely. Michael Dell famously said, this is the worst idea. You should just sell the company and give the money back to the stockholders. He turned this into the most profitable American company right now with their cash reserves, and I will never forget that whole thing.
Even the concept of the iPod too, just to throw everything behind that device. I was in college when the iPod came out, and I was just like, well, I don't understand. Why not just use my Walkman? It's pretty good, right? I have CDs. I have a booklet. I could put that in.
Right.
And then kids were like, no, you can hold 5 gigs of. I'm like, how many songs? I don't understand this. And now it's just second nature to everyone. I mean, I walk around with my music library in my pocket.
Yeah.
It also has my phone, it has everything I need, like, walk around with. And this is something that Steve saw. And that's part of the thing, too, is just the vision of the man and the direction that he led that company in. It made a huge, I mean, just from when he came back in 97 and, immediately...
When he came back, Apple was thought of, well, this is a computer company. They make computers, and I hope they can excel and succeed at making and selling computers. And look what he's done now. Our discussions have been about from over-the-top set-top the devices that replace TV to digital music to streaming movies he really has he found a market and he found the way to make the best products for it.
I think something too that he brought was like just the fact that nothing does one thing anymore. Nothing just does one thing, and that was like. And then when he came back and he introduced the iMac, and it was this internet computer. It was like, what does the I stand for? The internet. All right, that's a kind of a new thing. What does this do? Just plug and play, and there's the internet for you. And that was kind of crucial to what he felt, which was always the customer experience. Let's make it easy on the customer. So all of the products just became easy.
And sexy. He brought this whole design. I know there was
Right.
obviously a team of people that worked with him, but the design of Apple products from when he reintroduced introduced the iMac, the colors and everything, and
Right.
all the way up to the iPhone that was just introduced this week, which surely he had some hand in, even though he's left the company. Those you care about Apple like a company. You get emotionally involved. Apple has evangelists, people that spread the word about
People
the company.
talk about the cult of Mac, but what they're really talking about is Steve Jobs. I mean, they're talking
He
about
was that
following
cult,
his
yeah.
vision. Yeah.
Yeah, it just became the cult of Steve, or the cult of Mac, as they called it. It just was always sort of just whatever this company comes out with, I'm going to go for it. And there weren't that many companies where you could say you're probably going to do something great,
Right.
and I'm going to be behind that 100%. I mean, I met Steve a couple times. I worked for Apple for about 5 years, and I was up at Cupertino a couple times, and I ran into Steve, and he was always just genuinely just a nice guy.
Oh, that's
You
so
know, he
nice.
was just, he cut me in line for sushi, but I forgive him.
Right.
I've forgiven Steve for that. But, I mean, it was just like, he was always just, this sweet guy who just, you saw him and you'd be like, wow, he's a guy, but there's so much that he brought to the
Did he-
world.
This world.
Yeah, it's so funny when you talk about there's not many companies that you can just wholeheartedly support and just know, well, if they're going to release something, it's going to be revolutionary, something's going to come from it, it's going to exploit a new market, it's going to do all these things. And I think no product has proved that more in the last few years than the iPad. It was one of those devices where we knew this market was coming. We thought tablets were going to happen. What is it about Steve Jobs and Apple that said, okay, here's a device, and you're all, we're going to make it an integral part of many of your lives, when other people were trying to figure out just how the device should look and feel and work?
Well, he's one of the guys that could bring in a pickup truck that I don't need at all and make me convinced I absolutely need it.
Right.
Just the way his reality distortion field that they always talk about when he's talking about products. But the iPad, long rumored, Apple was going to have a tablet, but then when they talked to him about it, and he was famous for this, oh no, we're not working on anything like that. We're not doing a phone. That's kind of not our territory. But then when the iPad came out and he was up there on stage demoing this thing, you instantly wanted it.
Yeah, and everyone thought, like, oh, maybe the iMac will be a touch thing. He realized your arms would get tired,
Right.
so he put it in your lap. And it just made they made a whole new category of device. Just this device that we'd seen on Star Trek, and he brought it
Right. He
to
actually
home.
made it happen.
And again, with the and he called it the pad, just like Star Trek. And again, with this, now with Siri, this talking to a computer, having it do stuff for you, it's the future.
Right.
And we're all, like, living in it.
Well, speaking of the future, what do you think Steve Jobs' legacy will be, and how do you think the company will fare now?
Well, Steve's legacy, I think something else not to be understated is his involvement with Pixar. Just backing Pixar when and no one really, it was just this little perfunctory part of ILM. And Steve was
Computers
like,
don't make animation.
I don't-
People do,
yeah.
with pens and tools and drafting tables. Wait a
Everyone's
second.
going to want to see pencil and ink.
Right.
No, we want to see whatever we can see. And he saw the creativity of the people at Pixar, and he backed that. Again, it's just this other thing that you don't realize how much that permeates. But now every animated movie is computer animated. And Pixar does amazing work. And Steve's legacy, not only in the entertainment field, but in, just FireWire. We know what that is now because of Steve Jobs. The iPad, it's a whole new tablet, it's a whole new section of PCs, and it's just, you cannot understate how much he has changed
Now,
society.
how much do you think this is going to affect the stock price?
Well, I think that it's nothing that people weren't prepared for.
Yeah.
It's-
Although still, when emotional news like this, there's always a dip afterwards,
Yeah.
and it's going to be a long time before I think there's going to be volatile a little bit with Apple, and people still don't know how Tim Cook is really.
Yeah.
It really is at taking the reins so far. It means he had one press conference so far.
Yeah, he had one press conference, and we haven't even gone through that launch yet of the product. I mean, we've announced it, but we haven't yet seen how the stores are going to handle it, how the networks are going to handle it, and so on and so forth. So it's just kind of going to be a waiting game, where you're just going to watch the stock and see when it's safe. I mean, it's probably going to dip a little bit just because the stock market is,
Wasn't he also serving as chairman at Disney? I believe he was the single largest stockholder after the
After the
acquisition of
Pixar deal.
Pixar,
Yep.
which is quite another thing too. His involvement there, which I'm not sure how. He definitely didn't define that company like he did Apple, but
obviously many questions raised. But the tragic news is unfortunately Steve Jobs has passed. It's just settling in here in the studio. I'm sure it's settling in at home, and we're going to take a little break. We'll come back and we'll have more on the legacy of Steve Jobs.
Hey guys, if you're just joining us, we're staying for an extended time tonight. Steve Jobs has passed, and we wanted to read a few things in his honor. A sad day for innovation and technology. Also, I send my thoughts and prayers for his friends and family. Well, so Jobs was working pretty much till the end. I guess some really do like their work. It's so nice that that's a nice life. A man from the future in our time showed us just how to advance further in time. R.I.P. Steve Jobs, your vision helped inspire our time. Now let's look at a little package for him.
By the time Steve Jobs was 20, he was the co-founder of what would become one of the most powerful computer companies on the planet. Started in his parents' garage with partner Steve Wozniak in 1976, the two designed their own personal computer, the Apple I. It may have looked like a pine box with transistors, but it was cutting edge.
Steve Jobs had this vision for computers that he felt computers should be just like consumer electronics, that they should be easy to use.
Parlaying their profit from Apple I, the two Steves upgraded the design and produced the Apple II. It was a revolutionary machine that changed the PC game forever.
His vision of how technology can be useful to people was a huge advance and moved us along this path more quickly and powerfully than anybody else that I can think of.
In 1980, Apple went public, and overnight, Jobs was the head of a multi-million-dollar corporation.
Apple went from a garage startup to $1 billion in revenues within the first 5 years. Steve Jobs was on the cover of Time magazine. He had $100 million by the time he was in his early 20s.
Not slowing down, in 1984, Jobs & Co. put out his pet project, the Macintosh.
Many of us have been working on Macintosh for over 2 years now, and it has turned out insanely great.
But just a year after the Macintosh hit shelves, Jobs was handed his walking papers at Apple.
How can you get fired from a company you started?
Steve was a very hard guy to work for. He's very blunt, and if you have the slightest weakness, he'll tear you apart about it.
Striking out on his own in 1986, Jobs bought Next Computer. In the same year, he purchased the graphics group from Lucasfilm, better known as Pixar.
He has created hardware, software, tools, and markets that didn't exist prior to him getting involved.
A decade later, Apple purchased Next Computer, and Steve Jobs came full circle, becoming CEO of the company he created. With the popularity of the iPod, iTunes, and iPhone, Apple has established itself as one of the most innovative and revolutionary companies in the world. And none of it could have been possible without Steve Jobs.
All right, joining me now to add to the discussion, X-Play's Adam Sussler, everybody. Adam, obviously, a brief package running down his life, and it touched on so many things, from being a visionary in a garage who had a dream, to striking out on his own after he's let go of his own dream.
Yeah, I know.
to acquiring animation companies. Is there a particular pinpoint on the map of his life that you go, okay, that's the one?
I think it was the Apple II or the Apple II series of computers. I was probably 8, 9 years old. I didn't get to have one in my family, but all of my friends did, and it was that sense that what he did was that liberating thing, this piece of technology that I think had IBM really gone forward and been the big player, it would have always been this thing that's out of reach, that is for people in suits, and he saw it as this thing of liberation. Mm-hmm. And that's where I believe, like you, me, and people's genuine interest in computers came from, because he gave it to them and said, here, what can you do with this? And I think that makes him really one of the most remarkable visionaries of the 20th century.
And you were telling a fantastic tale of his attention to detail.
Yes.
It's one thing to have an overall vision of where technology can go and how people can use and apply it, but he was concerned with the tiniest little thing.
And I think this kind of floods back into his notorious reputation of not being the easiest man to work for, given a rather very exacting quality. But I heard this, I believe it was on NPR, when they were talking about his right-hand man, whose name I'm forgetting, who's his designer, when they were introducing the iPod. It was the night before they're going to show it at Macworld, and when they put in the headset, both of them were like, "Where's that satisfying click sound that you want?" There really is something satisfying about that. Overnight, they made it so you would get that click, it's hard to now imagine the iPod without that sound. Like, I'm putting it in, I'm now going to kind of zone out and listen to some music.
Right, but instantly notice there's that tiny little detail that's missing.
And once again, he created this user-friendly interface, and I think it's, once again, that level of attention to detail.
Do you think that anybody at the time, other than Steve Jobs and perhaps the people that were working for him, saw iTunes and the iPod being the center point of this new revolution for the company?
I think this is one of those things that was a benefit, back in the days of Tech TV, because this is all you heard talk about. I was the guy in the corner talking about video games. Everyone else was talking about this. When I started out there in 1998, Apple was a non-entity. Much less, you would never think them moving into alternate media, because they could barely handle what established them in the first place, which was the home computer market. And, look at where we are now. This is the single most important brand probably worldwide.
Right.
It is. I couldn't have thought of it, but now the way that they did it is the model that everyone really tries to follow and just alter slightly.
Right now we have Joshua Topolsky joining us via Skype. He's the editor-in-chief of The Verge. Joshua, are you there?
I'm here.
How are you, sir?
I'm as good as I can be right now.
I hear you. I think that's a sentiment that a lot of people are feeling right now. How do you think we will remember Steve Jobs, Joshua, if we look 10 years down the line?
I think that he'll be remembered as an absolute visionary when it comes to technology. And I don't see how anybody could view what he's done with technology, particularly in the last 10 years alone, when you look at it. I don't see how anybody could look back and not see the work of probably, one of the greatest geniuses that history has recorded. And I don't think I'm overstating the fact. I think when you look at throughout time, when you look at great geniuses, I think Jobs will be remembered as one of those guys who had these kinds of sparks of imagination that other people couldn't even get close to.
Yeah, I've never seen more heads nod in agreement to a statement. Everybody in the studio is absolutely in agreement. Do you think Steve Jobs' biggest accomplishment, will it have been a product, or will it have been an idea?
I think it's an idea, and I think that idea is we as humans can take this technology that we've made, which is highly complex and is daunting to most people, and we can take that and turn it into something that is really beautiful and really an expression of, an expression of what the best people can do as humans. I think what's amazing about the product that he's made, and I think his passion was for this, and he always talked about this intersection of liberal arts and technology, and I think his passion really was for creating devices that allowed people to create. And I think that, looking back, that's really, it's the idea of that, the idea that technology can be so much more than just a bunch of silicon, that it can be something that is really not only a device that's beautiful or an application that's beautiful, but a product that it really enriches our lives.
I see you dramatically agreeing with that. Do you think Steve Jobs will be remembered as an artist whose medium was technology? And
I think so. He was also the person who created that toolkit for other people. And, I think him letting Pixar do what they did, letting them explore, he kind of helped make that technology happen, and then they took the creative and went and did it. What I was thinking about in terms of the liberal arts aspect of Apple is when you got a Mac, one of the key things everyone had was Mac Paint. And it really, I think, identifies what that philosophy was with these products was, here, have this. We want you to make something. We want to make it as easy as possible for you to make something because that's what a computer's for. It's not supposed to own you. It's supposed to make you express yourself.
Apple is asking people to email their memories of Steve Jobs to rememberingsteve@apple.com. Joshua, I'd like to ask you, if you were to email something, what would you actually put in the body?
I mean, that's tough. I've had a long history with Apple, but I think probably the most important, my most important experience with Apple and with products that Steve Jobs touched was when I was a kid. I always had PCs, and at some point, I kind of figured out when I was very young, like, hey, these Macintoshes exist and they do awesome stuff. And I begged my parents for months to get me a Mac, and I finally ended up getting a Mac, an LC. I don't know if you remember the LC. It was this really thin computer.
Yeah.
And I was just blown away by it. I had this program I used to use. It was called Animation Works. It was kind of like a cell-based animation application for the Mac, and it was just like I would sit there for hours just doing these weird, stupid little cartoons. And that was the first computer where it was like suddenly this idea of being able to really create with a computer was just wide open. I mean, PCs could do, obviously they did a lot of the same stuff, but the way it was presented on a Mac was totally different. The kinds of developers and the kinds of applications they had were so much more geared towards the creative. And so I think that would probably be, my fondest memory was this kind of realization that I could use what is like a cold kind of awkward device to create some really warm and interesting things.
Well, a million different products, a million different concepts, and just a whole lot of brilliance. And I wish we were speaking on better terms, but I can't thank you enough for joining us. Thanks to Adam Sessler, Joshua Topolsky, Kevin Kelly, Matt Myra. Of course, thanks to Candace Bailey for being here as well. We're going to have more on this developing story in the days to come, but right now we ask you to stay tuned for a very special report on Steve Jobs. Thank you guys for watching, and we hope you stay tuned. Appreciate it. Thanks, Adam.
No problem.
Appreciate it.